Hey there. 1 2 1 2. Okay. Hi. Okay, I'm waiting a few more minutes for everyone to join, and then we'll go and talk about DAOs. I've also fixed the non-submission problem on the website. So there was an issue where you wouldn't get a score increase when you completed the project. Now it's done. So I've seen already a few people completing project 1 and 2. Some people are going very fast. Okay. One second, I'm coming back. All right, let's go. So we're going to talk about DAOs, which is the focus of this week. And to introduce DAOs, we will talk about 2 of them on Ethereum and 1 of them on the internet computer. Actually, it's called the NNS DAO, and it's probably the most important DAO on the internet computer because it's the DAO that manages the network. The 2 others are Uniswap and Gitcoin, which are Ethereum projects. So Uniswap DAO. So I've taken this example to kind of showcase what's the status of DAOs today, what they can do, and what they cannot do. So Uniswap, if you're familiar with crypto, you know it's one of the most important projects, a DeFi project, biggest one on Ethereum. It's a decentralized exchange where you can trade tokens, so USDT for Ethereum, directly on the blockchain. So you don't need to go through centralized exchanges. It was launched in 2018. And only 2 years later, actually, they launched a token, which is a really surprising fact in crypto. Usually, a lot of projects rush to release their token. They didn't. This is why it's also regarded as one of the best distributions of tokens ever. What they did was very smart. They essentially check all of their users, and they rewarded them with tokens, all of their past users. I think it's an example of how you should launch your project, by providing value first and then launching your token and rewarding your users, and not the other way around, where you don't have a project, but you already launch a token. That's just my opinion on that though, but yeah. So what they can do right now with the DAO is essentially voting on a few things, like voting on, for example, some parameters of the contract, like some interest rate, like some rates, voting on where to deploy Uniswap, voting on a few directions for the project, but the proposals are not on chain. What I mean by that is that essentially you pass proposals, but you need to trust the Uniswap team that they will actually implement the code to make those proposals happen. So it's the biggest project, and still the DAO, even though it's really exciting, doesn't do much on a technical sense. Sure, things happen and people vote, but it's not the DAO. It's more of the developers. So pretty interesting. Now let's look at another one, which I really, really like. Big inspiration. It's called Gitcoin. It's an open source funding project. So essentially they fund developers and they create public infrastructure and open services through quadratic funding. Really one of the best projects, in my opinion, that came out from the Ethereum world. Same thing as the previous project. They actually launched the DAO only 4 years after the project. So they didn't rush into it. They launched a project, they provided value for a few time, and now they are actively looking to decentralize through the DAO they've launched. It's great because it's a DAO. I think it's one of the DAO that I found, and I've done a lot of research, that is really decentralized. Of course, it's still like early, but you have a lot of contributors, people that are not part of the team that actually contribute to the DAO, give their opinion, orient the project. And it's actually very, very rare to see that. Most of the time, you would only find a handful of people, but they are really pushing the space. And yeah, so big shout out to them. Again, if you look at what they're doing on chain, none of it is happening on chain. So they do a lot of proposals. They check the community temperature. They make like a lot of texts and discussions is happening online, but nothing is really happening through the DAO. Now, let's talk about the NNS. So this is, for me, one of the most impressive DAO that exists today. But on the technical side, essentially, this manages the entire internet computer network. So it's able to upgrade the protocol when there is a new version of the code. So the ICP protocol that gets updated automatically when the DAO adopts it. It's also able to manage the subnets, so essentially adding or removing nodes. It's able to perform operations on canisters. It's able to manage the ICP token, so inflation rate or deflation rate. And it's also where some of the most important parts of the network are stored, like the registry that stores the public key of the subnets, the configuration and topology of the network, and all sorts of things. And all of this is happening on chain. So you have a stacking system where you essentially stack your ICP token, you receive a neuron, which gives you voting power, and you can directly vote on proposals. Actually, I want to do a quick break and show you how it looks like. So there is a dashboard. I've already shown this one. And we can actually go through the governance section if things load properly. Okay, so we have actually quite a few stats about what's happening with this NNS. We can see, sorry, we can see the number of neurons. So those are like ICP stacked for more than 6 months. You can stack from 6 months to 8 years if you're really committed. And this gives you voting power into the network, which makes sense because, of course, you're financially incentivized to participate. So it's great to see more and more neurons. Right now, we don't have proof of humanity, and we don't have any kind of identity attached to the neuron. So we don't know if if two neurons are controlled by the same person, which I think is a problem in the sense of we don't know how decentralized the system is. So the good thing is that the system is dynamic and we can actually improve it to make it as transparent and decentralized as possible. You can see the rewards. So if you vote in this NNS DAO, you get rewards, which are ICPs. You can see the participation rate and some other statistics a bit less interesting. We can see how much people participate. So it seems to fluctuate depending on the proposals, of course. Some are more interesting than others. And we can also see the voting power of Dfinity. So Dfinity, the foundation, they have, of course, a big stake in the network, which is decreasing, but it's still at 20%. So they currently hold quite a few amount of power in the network. So that's one thing to note. And then we have the proposal. So you can see everything that is happening. Like this is just a few items. So we can even have more of that. Can add data center, update subnet. Let's see one proposal, for example, this one, how it looks like. So this one was really easy to adopt. Usually updates are pretty easy to pass. 99% voting results. And it was created actually today. It was already passed. Everyone, you can see everyone that voted, everyone that decided to publicly list their identity. So this is a new kind of democracy, which is super interesting, I believe. You essentially have the ability to raise your voice and say, I want to be a publicly known neuron. And if you do that, you will be essentially streaming and showcasing what you vote. Usually you will also publish on social media like your views and why you vote some way and not another way. And you can see here, everyone that is like out there, we can see how they voted. Okay, so that's for the NNS. And all of this is happening fully on the IC, so fully on chain, which is super cool. The fact that the DAO doesn't need any like intermediary to pass anything. And that's my main point about the Motoko Bootcamp. Of course, it's about Motoko, but it's also about DAOs, because we can make DAOs super cool with the internet computer. Why? Well, because now we can do more things than with smart contracts. So we can store websites and we can load them directly from a canister. You will do that actually on the level 5. You will create a mini website for your DAO and you will be able to load it directly from your browser. You can store files and assets directly on your canister. And you can communicate with a bunch of other services like other blockchains or even Web2 services, which means we can now build all sorts of infrastructure on a decentralized infrastructure, and that changes everything. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it's actually everything, because, well, why are we here? What is Web3? Web3 is about owning a piece of software. But if you're using Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services, you're not owning your software. You are only renting it. And so that's why we need this infrastructure, this piece of technology to essentially own directly the software. If we look at Web2, you know this model, pretty simple. Users being extracted by their value, and investors and developers receiving a big piece of the pie. In Web3, things are a bit different. Everyone is a developer because everyone can contribute to the DAO. Everyone can, in theory, publish some code. Everyone is an investor because everyone can trade the token, and everyone is also a user if they are involved in the application. The thing is that there is no other way than to have a decentralized cloud if you want to own an application, because otherwise your application, or at least some part of your application, will be owned by your company. So if you want to remove the intermediaries, you need to deploy something on the internet computer. And maybe some other days there will be other possibilities to do that somewhere else. But right now, it's only possible on the IC, which is why it's so exciting. So yeah, that's my theory. That's my thesis. All of this makes Web3 a reality. It's not only about theory and building things. It's really, you can own a piece of the software. Like the DAO controls the canister. The canisters is the application. And the DAO is the only body able to update and upgrade those canisters. So you really, like the token that you own, for example, in the case of OpenChat, is really directly a piece of the software. I have this quote, which I really like. Co-owned software is to Web3 what the combustion engine was to cars. We had a lot of cars before combustion engine was a thing, but no real utility, only for crazy like scientists and crazy ideas. But as soon as it get possible to mass market it, that's completely changed how we work and how we lived. And the same thing is about to happen with Web3. Now, those decentralized organization, I'm skipping this slide because it's not relevant anymore, but those centralized organizations, and I'm guilty of this as well, but all of them, they are relying on still centralized software. We use Notion, we use Instagram, we use all sorts of things. And I believe we need an alternative to all of those softwares. Maybe some of them will do their transition to Web3, and we don't need to rebuild them from scratch, but they need to at least give us transparency and privacy, because DAOs, they rely on the assumption that people can trust them. But if it's the same as software, if you use a piece of like tooling that is not transparent, how can people trust your DAO? No, it's not possible. So you need a decentralized alternative, or at least a transparent alternative. And that's why this week we're building a micro DAO. It's a very broad concept. What is a DAO? And I don't claim to know how to build a DAO, what is the best road to take. But I think it's very interesting that this concept kind of summarizes a lot of the little things happening in crypto. So when you build a DAO, you need a database for your members, you need a token, you need a voting system, you need a website to present it to the rest of the world, and you need a purpose, like a reason to do it. And that's each level of this bootcamp is about this specific component. So level 1 is finding the goal of your DAO. Level 2 is implementing a database in Motoko. Then you will create a token, then a voting system, and then a website. If you do all of this, you have 1 week, which is a long period of time to do all of this. You graduate. So you will receive a Motoko Bootcamp diploma, which is yet to be built, but will be built at some point. And now, so we have more times, and I want to go into like kind of state of the art of what is happening right now. We will build a micro DAO, but there are things that are more advanced that are already happening. What is it? It's called SNS. Again, I don't claim that this is the best way to launch a DAO, but this is a super interesting framework. So for those of you that don't know what is SNS, essentially NNS is the DAO for the whole internet computer. SNS is a micro DAO for each service. So each application, like OpenChat, for example, uses the SNS. It's a framework. Essentially, when you start your application as a developer, you control it. When you use the playground, you can redeploy, you can modify the canister. So at this point, no one can really trust it. When you use something like the SNS, the control of the canister is transferred from a developer or a team of developers to a DAO. And at this point, all the upgrades goes through the DAO. It's also a good moment to create a token and transfer the control of the DAO to the token holders. So that's also a way for entrepreneurs to raise money for their application, which is, I think, combining two great things. We've already seen a few projects. No advice here, no financial advice, of course. This is only education, and I don't recommend any of those projects. But This is what is happening right now, and I would like to explore some of them with you. So, of course, the one that is kind of the example is OpenChat. That was the first one, and they went through it brilliantly. I think they raised like 1 million ICP, which was $5 million. And they've been making a lot of progress since then on their application. So how does it look like? Again, here, we can see we have open proposals. And let's take a look at some of them. As you can see, this is like a really specific proposal. Instruct, infinity swap, chat, ICP, swap, canister, to refund chat, and ICP. So this seems to be a very specific situation. There is a DeFi project called Infinity Swap. There is an OpenChat project, and apparently they've deposited chat and ICP token to essentially enable trades, and the token needs to go back. I don't know why. I don't know exactly who did that. When what is voted, but you can see that the DAO is able to essentially call functions on those canisters, and we can even probably see the exact. Yeah, we can see the exact like canisters called that are executed. What does it mean? I think it means two things. One, it's super cool because a DAO is really able to execute code and do things, which is not something you will find in a lot of places. Two, it's very hard to read and very confusing. I don't think anyone except probably us today will read this, which means there is a lot of work to do towards making DAOs more kind of accessible, explaining what's happening, also helping people navigate this space. So that's a lot of projects that we can build and a lot of potential ideas for entrepreneurs. Like, for example, you could do a whole data analysis on this and check if someone is maybe trying to influence the DAO, who is voting when. Like, you could kind of see those things because everything is recorded on the internet computer. So if you want to go through SNS, it's a fairly simple but long process. You have to go through the documentation, so we can actually check it. SNS framework. It's here. So I will give the link in the chat. And essentially, it's a very big framework. So you have a governance, like kind of canister that will be set up. You have a token canister that will be set up. I think you also have, decentralization swap, archive canister. So as you can see, it's like a lot of moving pieces that you have to bring together to create this SNS. And it's not the only way to create a DAO, but it's a super interesting and super advanced way. Okay. You can even test it locally if you are interested. It's possible to test it locally. And now we are working towards managing it. So as you can see, you need to create proposals. You need to manage the cycles. And all of this is really new. So it's very rough and very hard. But that means like a lot of things to build and potentially tools to create to help us. Okay. So we can either go through in more deep dive into the SNS, or I can also answer questions. And so let's go back to the SNS. So let's see what we have. As you can see, we have quite a few different projects that goes through a DAO. Maybe some of them will make use of the DAO, some will not. But we can see that we have a chat application. So this is OpenChat. We have a blogging application. This is Nuance. It's an alternative to Medium. You have Mod Club, which is not really an alternative to anything. It's more of a new concept. It's a moderation platform as a service. So essentially, if you need moderation on your platform, you will be able to tap into their API and use their cohort of moderators. User verification as well is something they do. Kinnick is a search engine for Web3. So that would be like kind of an alternative to Google, though I don't know how advanced they are. ICX is Twitter with privacy and ownership. IC Ghost is a token. Alternaut is an alternative to TikTok, I would say. Dragons is a game. Catalyze is a Discord. And BoomDAO is a tooling DAO. So essentially, they provide the tooling for building games. As you can see, a lot of different projects, not one single like area. We have social media, games, finance, and even more like blue sky kind of project. Well, there are more things we could dive into. The ICP link. Which link? Gabula? I don't know which link you're referring to. That's about it for DAOs on the IC, at least right now. We still have tons of things to build. So as you can see, it's pretty early. I believe DAOs are going to be different next bootcamp. But yeah, like essentially the main value prop for me is DAO. And I'm looking forward to seeing you building like new DAOs, new kinds of governance system. No question? All right. So I'll close it for now for this session. The next one is in 30 minutes. We have mentorship session. So we will go back to the Motoko side of things, do some coding. If you have an issue, this is time for you to come and get fixed. I see everyone in 30 minutes. Bye.